Hello, everybody, and welcome once again to the Public Podcast. I'm your host, Kinsey Grant, and today's show is brought to you by SinglePoint, a renewable energy and sustainable lifestyle company. I'm so excited to welcome our guest today to have a chat about air quality, about how it impacts our lives, especially at this moment in the year. Our guest is Wil Raston, the CEO at SinglePoint. Wil, welcome to Public. How are you today?
I'm doing wonderful, and thanks for having us on, Kenzie. I appreciate it.
Of course, I'm excited to chat today. I hope we can cover a lot of ground here. There's certainly a lot to talk about. When it comes to air quality, this is something that the two of us have talked about before, but we have a more specific angle here today that I'm excited to get your perspective on. We're going to be talking a little bit about kind of the broad strokes of why it's important to understand air quality and understand how SinglePoint and how any other company could factor into this, especially for all of those investors out there listening. But we're also going to talk about the impact on return to school, which is going to be pretty interesting. So with that, I figured we could kick things off with just sort of some basic definition. So if you don't mind, Wil, could you tell me what is indoor air quality? We will commonly refer to it as IAQ. And most importantly, why is it important?
Absolutely. Well, it's a tremendously important topic, and IAQ, indoor air quality, is simply the fact of the air we breathe every day. We spend over 90% of our time indoors. So everything that we're sitting in our offices, conference room, kids at schools, it's that air that we're intaking and exhaling every single moment of the day. And there's so many factors and variables that are in the air that have historically really not been considered or thought about. So, there's been a lot of movement around, well, what are we breathing? What are we taking in? What's affecting our health? How is it affecting our cognitive abilities? And there's just that whole dynamic of how important our air is to our overall health has become extremely top of mind as over the last 2 years, 3 years have occurred.
So obviously a lot of that over the last 2 and 3 years has coincided with the COVID-19 pandemic. We're talking about a global illness that has been transmitted as an airborne virus. Tell me a little bit about how COVID-19 has impacted the way that we consider IAQ or the way that we interpret IAQ as just kind of the general population.
Yeah, it's really brought it to top of mind. It really made people start thinking about what's in their air, what to look for. Why is it important to understand what we're breathing and who we're sharing air with? Because as we sit in our office spaces and our students are sitting in the classrooms again, every breath I exhale, you're breathing a certain percentage of the breath that I just exhaled, right? So anything that I'm putting into the air is there. And it goes far beyond just the air that we share. It's also what is being emitted around us from pollutionary environmental factors, allergens, dust. There's so much that goes into making up our indoor air quality and what we're breathing that has a significant impact on our health. So really what's happened since this pandemic that's happened, that has occurred over the last few years, is it's really driven those that are looking at what's in our air to really put out the information, really study it, really understand it, and then find solutions and what happens when we implement those solutions. And that's the important part to look at. Is it's not just, we're not just protecting against the next pandemic, or if this continues to keep going, we're protecting just against everyday environmental factors. We're not going to get away from pollen. One of the biggest things to improving indoor air quality is air exchange rates from indoor outdoor air. But we're not going to be improving the outdoor air as quickly as we can start cleaning it. And it's important to have that air, but we're not going to be able to get the pollens out of it, the allergens, the exhaust fumes, anything like that. So implementing indoor air quality solutions by, certified HEPA portable units, such as the ones that we provide to schools, are a huge addition and really help improve the air quality that we breathe, every single day.
Yeah. And let's talk about the schools specifically. We're having this conversation at the end of summer. A lot of children are returning to school. Parents are preparing for the back to school chaos. And a lot of the reality of going back to school is going from maybe spending more time outside to sitting in a classroom all day for children, especially. We had a recent piece from the New York Times that stated 41% of school districts need to update or replace their heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems, which is a pretty staggering number, 41%. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this.
And that was just in the buildings that they studied. And that was over 36,000 buildings. So there's a huge number. It's not surprising. We've got an old infrastructure and school system and old buildings, right, that were really designed in the 70s with the right intent in mind. Energy efficiency, keeping cold air in, keeping warm air in, depending on the seasonality. But what that created was sick buildings. All that air is stuck in these buildings. There's no indoor outdoor air exchange. There's recycled ventilation systems. So we're really just recycling the air for years and years and years, because the only indoor air quality, indoor outdoor air exchanges we're getting are when the door opens, which is so minimal. So really, when we're looking at these buildings, it's really no surprise. And that's why the government has stepped up in such a big way with over $121 billion available through various programs for schools. And then we have $350 billion available through various programs for commercial buildings to improve indoor air quality, ventilation, indoor outdoor air exchange rates. And that's all just happening in real time. This is just getting implemented. Money's becoming available. Districts are still figuring it out. Government buildings are still figuring it out. Ultimately, we're going to see a lot of this start to take shape. It's really become a generation defining sector, indoor air quality and our air quality. It's going to be one of those, it's one of the industries and one of the sectors that is here to stay, because this is about our health. This is about our longevity. This is about us being able to think clearer, be reduced of the drowsiness of allergens, fight the different, things that come through each season, the flu, cold. So it's really an overall, it's for the greater good of what we're doing every single day. We don't choose, if you saw a bottle of water that had particulate matter floating around in it, you would probably choose not to drink that, and you would go find filtered water. It's the same thing with air. Unfortunately, we just can't and haven't really studied it to understand it, but now all of that's coming out.
Yeah, certainly a very interesting way of putting it. And you mentioned that it kind of feels like we're almost on the precipice of really understanding the totality of this issue, and of really understanding the urgent need to invest in this and to understand how we can provide better solutions for indoor air quality. So tell me a little bit about what some of the, where the momentum is in terms of the solutions that are coming to fruition to improve indoor air quality, to bring, obviously attention to this issue. Talk to me a little bit about some of the key players and some of the key movements here in terms of bringing this into the public awareness and offering solutions.
Absolutely. So the quickest thing, the best thing that you can do is implement a portable air cleaner, like what we have and what many other companies are providing out there. What you want to look for is certified HEPA. It's the most tried and true. It's there. It's going to work. It's been studied. There's plenty of data that says how well certified HEPA filtration works, and that's what you can do right away, because it's plug and play. You purchase one, plug it into a normal outlet, turn it on, and you instantly have an air cleaner working in your favor to help support that room that it's placed in. Secondarily, it's really looking at in the indoor outdoor exchange rates and being able to bring in fresh air. And that's a little bit more work. There's going to be some building structural change, not necessarily structural, but ventilation changes that have to be made. And those are going to be the longer term projects that are necessary and needed, and going to be actually required, as ASHRAE has just put out new standards on exchange rates and ventilation. And if you're not in compliance with those standards, then you start to see other things start to happen. So we'll see these new implementations, but really the best thing near term for people to do right now is be looking at portable air cleaners, then looking at how can I get additional ventilation into the room for those exchange rates, whether that's opening a window if you're able to. A lot of schools aren't able to do that. It's just, one, you're violating other protocols for safety reasons, and two, their age is old and they've been painted shut and everything else. So it can be a little bit more difficult to do that. But then it's just, then you're looking at the overall changes of your air handlers and everything else, which are longer term capital investment projects. But the good news is right now that funding is available. So, building owners, operators, managers, and then school districts, it's really important to start looking at this now, because it's going to become standard. And when that ASHRAE standard goes into effect, if this money is no longer available, it's going to have to come out of your general capital budget for capital improvements. So it's important to start looking at it now, planning for it now, get the implementations while you can, while this money is available from the federal government that is earmarked specifically for making a better indoor air quality environment.
So as somebody in the renewable space, with all of this in mind, the funding programs, the potential benefits that businesses or schools or really anybody could take advantage of, I'm curious to hear how the renewables space specifically is responding to this newfound interest and obviously obvious interest in indoor air quality. How is the renewables sector stepping up? What has kind of been the response there?
Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate you bringing that up because, we are at the forefront of two, again, generational defining sectors here with indoor air quality and then our renewables business on the solar side of the business. So as far as the grants and, the different bills that are available out there, it's across both segments. As I've mentioned on the schools, we have the ESSER, EAMS, CARES Act. These are all federally funded programs, and in total, they amount to approximately 121 billion that's available for K through 12 schools. But then there's other security grants, there's state grants, there's a lot of different money out there for schools and other organizations to start taking action and improving their indoor air quality. And our subsidiary BPA Solutions, that's what we do. We work with helping you find, source, and ultimately implement the solution of utilizing our air purifiers and our air cleaners. And then on this renewable side of the business, we had the Inflationary Reduction Act just recently passed, which allocated $369 billion to the renewable space. It's the single largest federal investment, really single largest investment ever in clean energy and making a strive and a push to move this energy transition along faster. As far as what we do and how that impacts us, the tax credits that users get is now been set for another 10 years. They were set to expire in the next 2 years, and they've been increased to a minimum threshold of 30%, and that can go all the way up to 50% on your taxes. So, depending on how much domestic content you use, it's also spurring growth just in the overall building, bringing jobs back and being domestic here. Billions of dollars have already gone into building manufacturing facilities for battery backups, EV charging, solar panel manufacturing here in the U.S. So these are all the things that we are a part of, that we are growing into. And again, the reasons that these are becoming two of the generational defining sectors in this space. We're talking about securing our energy, being able to ensure that we can produce, consume, and be redundant in our own spaces. So whether or not you're looking at it from a I want to produce clean energy, everybody agrees with we need to ensure that my house, when my grid goes out, that my house has power. We want to make sure we have that safety, that security, that redundancy at our place of business or at our place of home. And then what we're breathing, right? Wildfire smokes. I'm sure on the East Coast, in New York, you were heavily impacted this summer. That's completely separate from any illnesses or allergens. That's something completely out of our control that majorly impacted a huge population of people throughout the Northeast, and now we're seeing it happen in Michigan. And it's only becoming more and more. So we're talking about safety, health, security. These are all things that we need in order to survive and thrive as we continue to move forward.
Yeah, certainly. I think a big part of why it feels especially timely to have this kind of conversation is because all of this stuff is just top of mind, right? We're talking about, right now, my family in Florida is powerless because of a hurricane. The power went out, and they're thinking about the grid and the backup plans. In New York, we had the wildfire smoke. It has impacted just me personally on a personal level in several ways over the last 3 months, and it's always interesting to think about how our investment choices and our investment strategies reflect those personal realities. I think that this is as an interesting case study in just that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is happening to us in day-to-day real time, right? We need energy, electricity every day. We have to breathe. So implementing these solutions, and being a part of these two industries is not only great business opportunity for us, but it's also the right thing to do. And we see it as just, continuing to better implement the quality of life for everybody.
All right. Well, with that, I want to thank our guest, Wil Raston, CEO at SinglePoint, for your time today. Thank you so much for joining us, for sharing all of this wonderful insight. It's been great to hear a little bit more about what you're doing. So thank you so much, Wil.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Kenzie, and we'll talk again soon.
Yes, absolutely. I also want to thank our partners at SinglePoint. Their ticker is SING on OTC markets. They made this episode possible. And like Wil said, we will be back soon with even more updates from the renewables economy and beyond. Thanks so much for listening. I'm Kenzie Grant, and have a good one.